everyone, and welcome to the Diamond Moment. I'm your host, Luciana Cordero, and today I'm here with Sean Wisenvarger. So, hi, Sean, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Another day in paradise. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty well too. I'm excited about this interview so we can get to talk a little bit. And I wanted to start by asking you about kind of like your journey as a fighter. So, the first thing that I wanted to know is how did you get into combat sports?
So, I wrestled most of my life. By that, I mean, not really most, but from 5 to 16, 17, I wrestled, and it's kind of just always something I've dreamed about. In my head as a kid, I thought I would be a boxer, but obviously I'm not a boxer. So I was about 3 years ago, when I was 27. I kind of had an epiphany. I had my oldest son at the time, and then I just had my middle son, and it was kind of like, we can do this now. We can try it and give it our best shot. If you don't make it, if it fails, at least you can say you did it, or you can live the rest of your life with kind of those what ifs. So I decided to contact the gym, and I got a hold of Valhalla MMA and asked them. I remember texting them before I even met them and stuff. I was like, "Do you guys have fights? Do you guys find fights and stuff?" And yeah, sure enough, I went in and trained and made it to on the fight team, and haven't looked back.
Yeah, what has it been like training with Valhalla MMA and like fighting for them?
It's been awesome. Valhalla is like almost like my second home in a way. I love the people, the atmosphere. Our senseis are next to none. I mean, it's just an amazing place to be. We have classes that are for everybody, and then we do have our fighting classes for the fighters and stuff. But it's so nice to have all those types of people, getting to help people and stuff like that as well. It's just an amazing atmosphere.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And well, now I asking a little bit more about like your fighting career. I came across the Wrecking Ball a couple of times. I wanted to know where the nickname comes from. Like, does it describe your fighting style? What can you tell me about it?
I mean, so any heavyweight fight's really going to be like a wrecking ball in a way. You got 500 pounds in that cage. So my sensei came up with that nickname, and to be honest, I wasn't a huge fan at first, but it's kind of grown it onto me a little bit. Yeah, he just kind of started calling me the wrecking ball, and I was like, that's it then. I'm not going to make my own fight name. So he came up with that, and I love it now. I've embraced it completely. But yeah, in his head, it's a wrecking ball. It does swing both ways, but if you get hit by it, it's going to hurt.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So every fighter has a unique mindset. I mean, there's no two people who are the same. So I wanted to know what goes through your head before the fight.
You mean like walking into the cage and stuff?
Yes,
Or
like right before stepping into the cage, what kind of goes through your mind?
My biggest thing is like my reason why. I'm not doing this for myself. I'm not doing this for really anybody but, my kids, and any kid who follows me to know that, this is possible. You're able to do whatever, you kind of set your mind to. So I really think about my family and stuff, and I say a little prayer right before I get into the cage, and thank God that He's given me the opportunity to be there. But other than that, it's really tunnel vision, just like kind of focus. Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, definitely. And this kind of links to motivation, like your motivation for fighting. And I know that now, like you're fighting for your family, like to make them proud. Um, but I wanted to know too, like, when at first I asked you about what got you into fighting, or like when did you start taking part in combat sports, and you told me that when you were younger, you did a little bit, like you did wrestling when you were younger, and now you went back into it again. Well, combat sports. Um, I wanted to know kind of like what's the thing that's like clicked and has made you say like, no, this is like what led you into it.
My kids. Um, the thing that really drove me to do it was I wanted my kids to firsthand be able to see what hard work, sacrifice, and you know, dedication, to be driven. What I wanted them to see firsthand, what can happen, what comes out of that, and what it takes. But yeah, other than that, provide a better life for my family and stuff. But mainly just, yeah, I want my kids to firsthand see that you can do anything that you want to do, but it takes hard work, it takes sacrifice, and just pure drive.
Yeah, definitely. And combat sports and fighting, especially, like it demands a lot of discipline and just being there, showing up, and it's demanding physically and mentally. And I wanted to know, how have you been able to manage that?
So I don't think I've managed it yet, but it's it's a lot. So I do work. So by the time I get off work, right now it's football season, so my kids are in football. So I go to their practices. My fiance works nights, so I got somebody has to be there at their practices, whether it be my dad or myself or my aunt. I do have a lot of people that help me. I have a little girl too, so just finding the time. When I'm at their practices, I make sure I'm getting my cardio in, because that's the only time I can really do it. They're both on the field and stuff, so I make sure the first half of the practice I'm running, getting my cardio in, and then if I'm not there at the practices, so I make it happen. It's a lot of sacrifices, a lot of highs and lows, but a lot of times that you're like, want to stop, but then you come back to your why.
Yeah, definitely. Like, do you think it pays off? Like, what's one thing, like when you've been sacrificing so much and you're like, oh, I gotta keep doing this, and then you get that moment when it, like, you're like, oh, yes, this is what I'm doing it for. Do you have that moment?
All the time, especially now, because I've kind of I wouldn't say reached the pinnacle, but I've kind of reached the pinnacle of the amateur rankings. So I'm number one in North America, number one in the state. I've reached number one. So as an amateur, I can't go any higher on the ranking boards. So it really, like, you made it this far, like you can't quit. Like, there's no option to quit.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's very much a fighter mindset, that you're like, well, it all depends. Like, if you get punched down, you have to keep getting up. That's essentially what this is about. So thinking about like you're this far, you can't quit, I think is really interesting, and it's a really good way to just approach this sport. That you gotta keep like standing up, getting up, and taking care of yourself and just being there, which I think is great. And I wanted to ask you too about like, well, you're number one now. You've been through some fights now, and I wanted to know if there's been any fight that really tested you, and in any way, it could be mentally or physically, but what was one fight that really tested you, and after you got through it, you were like, okay, yes, I'm gonna keep pushing.
So really my first fight, Anthony the Gorilla, we're pretty good friends now. He actually lives near me as well. You know, he'll come into the gym and train with us too. But he's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. I mean, when I fought him, he was benching 500 pounds. So he is just unbelievably strong, and just the fear of that being my very first fight, and walking out to the cage, I felt like a lamb going to a slaughterhouse. Like, I felt like he was just gonna, you know, destroy me. But I did have my game plan. I didn't want him to take me down or get hands on me, and because I know he was a gorilla. Like, they don't call him the gorilla for nothing. He's so strong. So yeah, just that fight, you know, it really gave me confidence of, you know, I can do this. I mean, yeah, I knocked him out in the second round, but really because he was super gassed and stuff. That first round, he dominated me. He got me. He hit me, and my ears were ringing. I ended up on the ground, and he was just on top, you know, hitting me. But I managed to get my coherence back and start timing his punches, and then I popped them off me and stuff. So that was a really good first fight for me. But my second fight, I ended up losing, and I would say I learned the most off of my second fight, because I gassed myself out. I went into the second round wobbling. I held a guillotine choke for at least a minute. I took him down really early in the fight, but I got excited and started throwing my hands right away versus establishing my base, and ultimately it cost me the entire fight. I ended up getting knocked out in the last bit. Like, I thought the second round was 40 seconds, but it was like 2 minutes and 34 seconds of me just getting my butt kicked. Like, I was shooting for a leg and he was just hitting me in every direction, and then eventually I just collapsed down. But if you look at every fight from that moment on, when I take somebody down, the first thing I'm doing is establishing my base, and you're going to go through, like, it's going to be really challenging to get me off of somebody once I've established my base on the takedown and we're done with that initial scramble. But yeah, I would say challenging wise, first fight, but lesson and teaching wise, my second fight for sure.
Yeah, and that kind of links perfectly into my next question, because it can get pretty aggressive when you're in the cage. I mean, obviously, and there's a lot of adrenaline. And when we're high on adrenaline, sometimes we make decisions that are not necessarily rational. We just go off of instinct. And I wanted to know, like, being in this situation, how do you manage, which is kind of what the second fight taught you, how do you manage to stay composed and, like, think about your moves and how they're gonna turn out?
So, I mean, I'm thankful I wrestled for so long, because that's really helped me a lot with the nerves, because every fighter is going to deal with nerves and fears and stuff like that. So I'm very thankful for that. And then my ability to rationalize and think to an extent in the cage. I mean, I go off a lot of muscle memory. Like, when I take somebody down, I don't want to shoot at that time. My body just does it. Like, my last fight, I wanted to stand up a little more with him, but he threw that kick and my body just naturally grabbed him. And then I did want to put him in a crucifix and stuff. I was talking about it before the fights, and there was clearly an opportunity to do so, but my body just took full mount. So my ability to kind of like think about things, like if I'm going for a submission, there was my title fight against the Galvin, and I had him in a guillotine choke, and I was able to remember what it was like, what I felt like holding a guillotine choke for a really long time. It tired me out, so I was able to release myself from that guillotine that I had him in, because it wasn't fully locked in and I knew it. So instead of squeezing him for 45 seconds, a minute, gassing myself out, it was like 10 seconds, and then I was back to, punching. So really just my ability to do those things. I can hear my coach. I don't hear the crowd. I just hear my coach. Those things are really what helped me in the cage. Keep the composure, to know my game plan, to follow through with my game plan, and yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, like, we've talked about this before in this podcast too, about how important it is to have a good base, like established base, and go through a lot of amateur fights before going like fully pro. How important it is to have this experience, because now a lot of people just go into one fight and then they want to like jump off, and like how important it is to keep training and build a strong base. And I wanted to know what you thought about that.
No, I think it's important. But I mean, there's a lot of cards that play in that deck. So like your age, how old you are, your history of genetics, etc. Because like even with me, I have 7 fights. I'm 6-1. My last 5 fights have been under 1:30 in the first round. So my cage time all around in the cage isn't very high. So there's probably a lot of people that would say, hey, like you need to have more amateur fights. But for me, because I'm 30 years old, like I strongly feel like this is kind of a now or never moment. If my record wasn't the way it was, and I haven't accomplished the things I've done as an amateur, I would maybe consider otherwise. But yeah, there's a lot of different things that play, but I do think you need to get experience. You should lose, because if you go into there's so many professional fighters that go in to the professional leagues with a undefeated amateur record, and then they lose their first fight and they don't know how to cope with that. They don't know how to deal with that, and it can hurt you.
Yeah, totally. It's like you were saying, like you learn more from your second fight where you lost than from the first one.
Yeah, most definitely. I always say you either win or you learn, because I mean, I try to look at my fights on the ones that I win and learn something I could have done better, or done this or done that. But you really, really, it hits different when you lose, and the lessons hit different than when you lose. You know what I mean? It's not it's not in one ear out the other. It sticks to you. Like,
yeah, and talking about lessons, what's one lesson that fighting has taught you, and how do you apply it, like not just for your future fights, but also outside the sport?
So really, it's taught me like anything is possible, depending on how much dedication you want to put into it, and if you're willing to make those sacrifices you need to accomplish it. Anything is possible, because I mean, after I lost, I never thought I would reach the ranking I am, and stuff. So it's really taught me that, and then it's really taught me to stay humble. Inside the cage, outside the cage, just stay humble. You never know what somebody else is going through. Just be kind, be thankful.
Yeah, great. And well, we're coming to the end of the interview. I wanted to ask you, looking ahead, what's next? What plans do you have? What goals are you fighting for?
So I think I'm going to go pro after the 25th of October. I've talked to my senseis about it. We've discussed it, and I think we're going to go ahead and pull the trigger on it and look at taking my first professional fight in early 2026 to get me acclimated to 5-minute rounds and elbows and knees to the face and all the rule changes that we're going to have. So that's kind of the future, and then see how my cards play out.
Nice. Well, best of luck. I mean, with your record, I think that's going to be pretty interesting to see. Really great. And I have one final question so we can close off this interview. And it is, what advice would you give to people who are trying to get into fighting, or maybe they just went through the first fight, maybe they lost, and they're trying to see if they should keep pushing? What advice would you give to them?
You got to keep pushing. Learn from your losses, take those lessons and apply them to the cage, and just keep going. You can't base a career off of one loss or one fight. So if you give up after one loss, you're gonna live the rest of your life with those what ifs. So you might as well just keep pushing.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sean. It was great talking to you today.
Awesome. I appreciate you so much.